Here is the essay you requested. Alex Forrest in _fatal attraction _ an unfiltered summary of her extreme behavior. Alex Forrest, played by Glenn Close in the 1987 film _fatal attraction _ is one of cinema's most infamous portrayals of obsession and boundary violation. The story tracks how a weekend affair spirals into stalking, manipulation, and violence. Here's a stark, detailed breakdown of her behavior in the film. *1. The initial setup. Alex is a book editor in Manhattan. She meets Dan Gallagher, a married lawyer, at a business meeting. They have a 2-day affair while his wife and daughter are out of town. When Dan tries to end it and return to his family, Alex refuses to accept the boundary. She frames the relationship as emotionally significant and insists he owes her more. *2. Escalation. Psychological pressure. Her first major escalation is cutting her wrists after Dan says he's leaving her apartment. It reads as both a suicide attempt and a coercive act designed to keep him from walking out. She tells him, "I'm not going to be ignored, Dan," and later calls his office repeatedly, then his home. She uses guilt, threats of self-harm, and demands for attention to force continued contact. *3. Invasion of privacy and stalking. Alex begins showing up uninvited. She meets Dan at his office, follows him, and eventually confronts his wife Beth at the family's home by posing as a potential buyer for their apartment. She pours acid on Dan's car, destroying it. She calls his house and plays recordings of their conversations to Beth, weaponizing private moments to destabilize his marriage. She also trespasses and listens to his phone messages. *4. Targeting the family and child. The most disturbing turn is when Alex kidnaps Dan and Beth's 6-year-old daughter Ellen from school. She takes the child to an amusement park, buys her ice cream, and treats the outing as if she were a stepmother. The act is framed as both possessive and threatening. She has access to the child and is willing to use her to force Dan's involvement. When she returns Ellen unharmed, she tells Beth she simply felt like taking her for a ride. *5. Violence toward others in the climax. Alex kills the family's pet rabbit and boils it in a pot on the stove, leaving it for Beth to find. It's a deliberate act of intimidation and a symbolic attack on the family unit. In the final confrontation, she breaks into the Gallaghers' home with a knife. She attacks Beth in the bathroom and is about to kill her when Dan intervenes, drowns her in the bathtub, and believes she's dead. She re-emerges for a last attack, at which point Beth shoots her. *6. Underlying character framing. The film never gives Alex a clinical diagnosis on screen, but her behavior codes as extreme abandonment rage, black and white thinking, and an inability to tolerate rejection. She oscillates between seduction, vulnerability, and aggression within minutes. The script uses her to externalize Dan's guilt and the consequences of infidelity, but it also makes her actions premeditated and violent rather than purely impulsive. Why she resonated. Alex Forrest became a cultural shorthand for obsessive acts, because her actions escalate methodically, from emotional pleas, to harassment, to property damage, to child endangerment, to attempted murder. The film portrays each step as a deliberate violation of boundaries after Dan says no. The starkness comes from how quickly intimacy is repurposed into control and how the private affair becomes a public, violent threat to an entire family. That is the arc of Alex Forrest's extreme behavior in _fatal attraction _ laid out without euphemism.